Chapter 1, A Love Built on Hope. Rachel came into my life like a storm, unexpected, fierce, and impossible to ignore. From the moment I met her, I knew she had a past, but the more I got to know her, the more I realized she was trying to escape it. She had worked as an escort for years, and it wasn't something she could hide. I remember the night she told me, how her hands shook, her eyes flickering with fear and shame as she waited for my reaction. But I didn't flinch. I didn't run. I loved her. And in that moment, I thought love would be enough. We spent countless nights talking about our future, about how we'd leave the shadows of her past behind and start anew. I wanted to be her salvation, the man who showed her that she could be more than her past. She wasn't defined by her old life, I told her. She was Rachel, the woman I loved, the woman I believed had a heart bigger than her scars. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. We built a life together, moved into a cozy house in the suburbs. She got a job as a graphic designer, working from home. I'd come home from work to find her waiting for me, her smile lighting up the room. We'd cook together, laugh together. She'd sit beside me, head resting on my shoulder, and I'd think how lucky I was to have found someone like her, someone who had known pain and yet still believed in love. But I had blinders on. I didn't see the cracks forming beneath the surface. I didn't see the darkness that still lurked in her heart, waiting to claw its way back into her life. I thought I had saved her, but maybe I had only delayed the inevitable. Chapter 2, The Cracks Begin to Show. It began with small things. Things you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. Rachel started staying up late, working on projects she said were for her clients. At first, I didn't mind. I knew she was trying to build her portfolio, and I admired her dedication. But soon, those late nights turned into early mornings. She began sleeping less, spending more time in front of her computer. And the more she worked, the more distant she became. Her laughter, once warm and free, became forced. Conversations grew short, transactional, like we were going through the motions of a marriage. There were fewer late-night talks, fewer moments where we shared our thoughts and dreams. I thought it was just a phase, a rough patch like every couple experiences. Then came the lies. Little ones at first, easy to overlook. She'd tell me she was meeting a friend for coffee, but come home hours later, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes distant. I tried to ignore the growing pit in my stomach. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her, the way I always had. But the signs were there. She became protective of her phone, never leaving it unattended, always keeping it close. She stopped looking me in the eyes when we talked. And whenever I asked her what was wrong, she'd smile that same forced smile and tell me she was just tired, just stressed from work. I began to feel like I was living with a stranger. The woman who once poured her soul into our love now felt like a ghost, drifting in and out of our life together. And the worst part was, I couldn't figure out why. I blamed myself, thinking maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention, maybe I was failing as a husband. I even suggested we take a vacation together, just the two of us, to get away from everything and reconnect. She agreed, but even on that trip, she was distant. I remember sitting on the beach, the sunset painting the sky with vibrant colors, and feeling the coldness between us. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away, pretending to adjust her chair. That was the moment I knew something was terribly wrong. Chapter 3, The Bitter Truth. The night it all came crashing down was a Thursday. I had come home late from work, exhausted but looking forward to a quiet evening with Rachel. She had texted earlier, saying she was going out with some friends but would be back soon. Midnight came and went, but there was no sign of her. I called her phone. Voicemail. Over and over, I tried, each unanswered call like a tightening noose around my chest. Panic set in, panic and dread. Something wasn't right. When she finally walked through the door at 1 a.m., her hair was messy, her makeup slightly smeared, and the smell of alcohol clung to her. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. "With Jessica," she replied too quickly. We lost track of time. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But as she breezed past me, her eyes avoiding mine, I felt a chill that ran deeper than any explanation she could offer. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I did something I had never done before. I checked her phone. The first message that greeted me was from an unknown number. "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again." My heart stopped. I scrolled through the messages, my hands shaking so hard I could barely read the words. The conversation was explicit, intimate in ways that felt like a knife to the gut. Rachel hadn't just been meeting friends. She had been meeting him. Peter. The next morning, I confronted her. I showed her the messages, my heart pounding in my chest, a mixture of anger and disbelief coursing through me. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try to lie. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen." Those words. "I didn't mean for it to happen." They echoed in my head like a death knell. I stared at her, the woman I had built my life around, the woman I had saved. I thought love was enough. I thought I was enough. I was wrong. Chapter 4, The Past Never Leaves. In the weeks that followed, I tried to piece together how it had all fallen apart. Rachel was full of apologies, promises that it wouldn't happen again, that she loved me, that it was just a mistake. But the damage was done. I couldn't look at her without seeing the betrayal etched into every corner of our life together. She told me Peter was someone from her past, someone she had met years ago, back when she was still an escort. It didn't mean anything, she said. It was just familiar. Familiar. The word felt like acid on my skin. Rachel hadn't just cheated. She had gone back to the world I thought we had escaped together. I had believed that she could leave it behind, that she could be someone new, someone better. But now I realized the truth. She had never left that world. It was still inside her, festering like a wound that had never healed. I spent nights pacing the house, replaying every moment of our relationship in my head. Had I been a fool for believing in her? Had I blinded myself to who she really was because I wanted so desperately to believe that love could change her? Rachel tried to fix things. She stopped going out, deleted Peter's number, begged me to go to counseling with her. But it was too late. The cracks in our marriage had grown too wide, and no amount of plaster could fill them. One night, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words, she finally said what we both had been thinking. "I don't know if I can be the woman you want me to be," she whispered. "I don't know if I ever could." Chapter 5, The Final Betrayal. Rachel's confession felt like the final blow. She had tried, I believed that. But deep down, she was still the woman she had always been, someone who couldn't escape the shadows of her past. I realized then that I had been fighting a losing battle from the start. The affair with Peter wasn't just about lust or excitement. It was about something deeper, something that had always been broken inside her, something I couldn't fix. She had gone back to him not because she loved him, but because he reminded her of the person she used to be, the person she still saw when she looked in the mirror. I asked her why. Why she had done it. Why she had betrayed me after everything we'd been through. "I don't know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop. That was it. The final betrayal." She hadn't loved him, hadn't even wanted him. But she couldn't stop herself. And that was what hurt the most, that she hadn't chosen me. Hadn't chosen us. Chapter 6, Goodbye, Rachel. I left her a few weeks later. It wasn't a dramatic exit, no yelling, no slammed doors. Just a quiet, painful goodbye. I packed my bags, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Rachel didn't try to stop me. She knew, as I did, that it was over. In the months that followed, I tried to rebuild my life. I moved into a small apartment, threw myself into work, tried to forget the life we had once shared. But the memories lingered, haunting me in the quiet moments when I was alone. I kept wondering if I could have done something differently, if there had been a moment when I could have saved us. But the truth was, Rachel had been broken long before I met her. And no amount of love could have changed that. I still think about her sometimes. I wonder if she ever found what she was looking for. Maybe she's with Peter, or maybe she's still searching for the piece of herself she lost along the way. As for me, I've learned that some things can't be saved. Some people can't be saved. And sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to walk away from someone you love, knowing that you couldn't fix what was broken. Goodbye, Rachel.